You learned it quietly, not through words, not through rules written down. You learned it through absence, through the look that never came when you were hurting, through the silence that followed when you needed comfort, through the way your emotions seemed to land in a room where no one was listening. So you adapted. You became composed, controlled, low maintenance. You learned which emotions were safe and which ones were dangerous. And the most dangerous of all was this one: need. Need is the emotion you were trained never to show. Not because anyone said, "Don't need," but because every time you did, the world felt colder. And here is the paradox, the quiet cruelty of emotional neglect. The very thing that helped you survive as a child is the same thing slowly starving you as an adult. What once protected you, emotional self-erasure, now keeps you unseen, untouched, and alone. You don't collapse dramatically. You don't demand. Instead, you disappear emotionally. You tell yourself you're independent, strong, self-sufficient. But underneath that strength is a nervous system still bracing for abandonment, and a heart that learned it was safer to go without than to ask and be ignored.
Emotional neglect is not what happened to you. It's what didn't happen. No attunement, no mirroring, no emotional translation. Psychologists describe this as a failure of emotional co-regulation, the process by which a child's nervous system learns through another person how to feel safely. When that process is missing, the child adapts by becoming their own regulator. This often leads to avoidant attachment, a pattern where closeness is associated not with comfort, but with disappointment. The avoidant child learns depending is dangerous, needing is shameful. I survive by not wanting. Over time, this rewires the nervous system into a state of chronic self-containment. Another key concept here is parentification. Not necessarily becoming the caretaker of others, but becoming emotionally self-parented too early. You learned to manage your feelings alone, without guidance, without soothing. Neurologically, this adaptation shapes the default mode network, the brain's self-referential system. Instead of experiencing emotions as signals to be shared, your mind learned to internalize and intellectualize them. Emotion became something to manage, not something to express. Imagine a house built without doors, perfectly stable, perfectly sealed. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. That house doesn't collapse, but nothing lives there either.
Carl Jung once wrote, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. But there is another burden, quieter, heavier, the unlived emotional life of the child themselves. You paid for belonging with authenticity. You paid for stability with silence. And the cost compounds. You breathe things you can't name, the comfort you never received, the softness you never practiced, the version of you that learned to need without shame. This is invisible grief. Grief for moments that never happened. The core fear beneath it all is not rejection, it's exposure. Exposure means letting someone see the part of you that still wonders, if I need too much, will you disappear? So even joy becomes cautious, even sadness becomes private, even love becomes measured. You don't fall into relationships, you manage them. You don't rest, you remain alert. And slowly, subtly, Life becomes something you endure well, but don't fully inhabit. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard described despair as the sickness of not being able to be oneself. That is the cost. Not misery, not chaos, but a quiet exile from your own emotional center. This does not disappear with age. It evolves. You might recognize it here. In relationships, you attract emotionally unavailable partners, not because you want distance, but because distance feels familiar. You struggle to ask for reassurance, then feel resentful when it doesn't come. In conflict, you minimize your needs. You say it's fine when it isn't. You believe being easy to be with is the same as being lovable. At work, you overfunction. You anticipate needs. You rarely ask for help and quietly burn out. With boundaries, you don't set them early. You endure until resentment forces distance. Then you disappear instead of repair. Internally, you intellectualize pain. You analyze instead of feel. You know why you feel the way you do, but still feel alone with it. In joy, you downplay it. You don't want to take up space. You celebrate quietly, as if visibility itself is risky. These are not personality traits. They are coping strategies. The beginning of healing is not changing behavior. It is witnessing the pattern without contempt. Saying, "Of course I learned this. It kept me safe." And then asking, "But is it still protecting me?" Unlearning begins when you stop gaslighting your pain. When you let the emotion exist without immediately managing it away. Healing does not mean becoming someone who needs nothing. It means becoming someone who can need without shame. Practices like inner child reparenting are not symbolic. They are neurological. You are teaching your nervous system a new association. Need does not equal abandonment. Shadow work asks you to reclaim the disowned parts, the needy part, the angry part, the grieving part, not to indulge them, but to integrate them. The work is choosing softness when control feels safer, choosing honesty when silence feels easier, choosing presence over protection. The psychologist D.W. Winnicott said, "The true self only emerges when the environment allows it." Healing is becoming that environment for yourself, and eventually choosing others who can meet you there. You are not broken. You adapted beautifully, but survival is not the same as living. And the emotion you were trained never to show, need, is not weakness. It is the doorway back to connection. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be whole.